Welcome to Maximizer CRM 101, the first of 3 courses designed to help you become truly familiar with how you work with Maximizer, whether you're a brand new user or whether you're simply taking a refresher course. In this session today, we're going to quickly review some of the onboarding concepts you were probably introduced to when we onboarded you. We'll take a look at adding an entry, finding that entry, contacting that entry, keeping track of what you do with that entry, and then we'll take a look at how you can change the way things look so that your Maximizer workspace truly reflects the way you do your business when you use Maximizer. At the end of the session, I'll leave you with a couple of reference pages that list all of the training videos that refer to all of the concepts that we'll be talking about here today. Let's get started. You probably already know the modules, menus, and tab following windows that are in Maximizer, but there's a couple of those tab following windows that I want to go over with you in a little more detail so that you can have a better appreciation of how they work. So if this is your first day at this new job or the first day working with Maximizer, after you logged in, you were probably saying, what am I really looking at? Well, these are the menus that I referenced, and each of them gives you things that you can do with the entries that you're looking at in your main window here. The modules over on the left will contain information relative to the whole of your database, and the tab following windows down here will contain information that's specific to any entry that you happen to be highlighting up here. I'm going to talk a bit about the details window and also a bit about the custom tab over here. When I highlight an entry and come down to the Details tab window, I have the chance to look at basic information relative to that entry, address, phone numbers, email addresses, things like that. Just to the right of that basic information is a place where I can have any number of fields that are both basic fields and custom fields that in Maximizer we call user-defined fields, or in other words, fields defined by the user. You'll generally hear us refer to them as UDFs. Any of the fields that we look at here, or in any of the other key field lists that we create, give us the chance to color or characterize the entries that we're looking at. What industry are they from? What do they buy from us? How often do they buy it? Who is their principal person that I should be dealing with? Things like that. And remember that any field that we put into Maximizer against which we record data, the purpose of doing that is so that eventually we can search against those pieces of information. For example, give me everybody who is in such and such an industry that buys this from us and has bought this in the past 6 months. In the 102 class, I'll show you how to create these key field lists and also how to create the custom fields or UDFs that populate the key field lists. But now let's go over and take a look at the custom tab. The custom tab was created to make it convenient for you, the user, to be able to see data that otherwise you would have to bounce out of one tab to the next tab window to see. We made it possible for a number of these tab following windows to all be collected into this custom tab. So let me click on it and show you. When I open my custom tab, I realize immediately I've got the information that I would otherwise see in my contacts window. I've got notes information I would otherwise see here, and I also have the key field lists here that were available to me over in the Details tab. Now I'm going to click on Edit Layout, which makes it possible for me to change the size, location, and selection of these widget windows that I'm actually looking at. I come down to the bottom here and click on this thing that says Add Widget. My options are to have a Contacts window, which I already have, an Activities window, a Documents window, 2 Notes lists. This Timeline one is the one I'm looking at here. And then I have the option for 2 key field lists, one for contacts and the other one for company or individual. Well, if I go ahead and drop out of that and just scroll down, I notice that I have the other notes window here, and I have space to either side where I could drop in another couple of widgets, so I'll bring that back up, and I think I'll add in activities and documents. And as I click on it, activities shows up here, documents should show up there. I'll scroll down, and yes, I find it there, but it doesn't seem to be fitting where I want it to, so I will have to adjust it. The easy way to do that is just to grab the boundary of the window and kind of move it over a little bit like that, and it automatically springs up to fill the space. I can finesse it a bit more by doing that. I could also use these little buttons over here if I wanted to. And over here under activities, I'll also scoot that one up just a little bit as well. So now they're all kind of at the same level. And I scroll up and look at them, and yes, I have got exactly what I want there. So at this point, before I do anything else, I will click Save. Now, not only are all my windows safely locked into place, but I can also hit this little button here and get an expanded view of that particular widget window. So if I had a lot of data in it, this would be a very convenient way of looking at it. I minimize that back down again when I'm done. And then perhaps I come over into my notes window and click Add, and add an important note here, and click OK. Once I add a second note, you'll notice that this is why it's called a timeline, because I can progress from one note to the other, review what was said then, review what's being said now. I can scroll down to my notes window and see the same notes here after I do a refresh on my tab following windows. In my activities window, I could click Add and have a chance to add an appointment or a task. And over in my documents window, I can click Add here and browse to virtually anywhere on my computer or the network to which I have access and add files in here as well. You notice that in each case I was able to do that without dropping out of the Custom tab and going to Notes or to Documents or to Activities. Very, very handy. Oh, and by the way, if I decide I don't want one or more of these windows, all I have to do is come back to Edit the Layout, identify the window I don't want, let's say Activities for example, click the X here, and that particular widget window is gone. If I then click Save and scroll down, you'll notice that that widget window is missing from here. Again, to put it back in place, I just click Edit Layout, click Add a Widget, click the one I want, it's back in place, close here, save here, and I'm done. In the next section, we're going to take a look at how we add entries. I want to make sure you understand the three different kinds of entries that exist in Maximizer. I'll show you different ways of adding entries to Maximizer, and we'll take a look at importing a list of entries from Excel. Adding a new entry to Maximizer is as easy as clicking Edit and Add an entry right here. And this is as good a place as any to show you that there are three kinds of entries we can add: company, individual, and contact. Company and individual are what we call parent entries, and contact is a child entry. Just as in a family, a child is attached to parents, so here a contact has to be attached to an individual or to a company. Even faster would be to click on the kind of entry that you want to make here, an individual for example, and click the plus button here next to New. This brings up the dialog box that you have to fill in, and you'll notice that last name is a mandatory field for an individual. If you're choosing company instead, then company name would be the mandatory field. As with anything in database management, put in as much information as you can the first time that you come to put the information in. Don't postpone it till another day. Too often that other day doesn't come. When you've finished adding everything in, you click Save, and that entry will now show up in your main address window. Another way to do this is to right-click anywhere in place and add a company, individual, or a contact. Now let me show you something interesting. I'm going to go up to View and clear the list. And this time, when I say, for example, right-click and go to Add, you'll notice that the contact type entry here is grayed out. That's because there is no parent entry existing in this main window to which I could attach a contact. Now, if your manager has just wandered past your desk and handed you a large list of entries and told you to put them into Maximizer, what are you going to do? You could, of course, follow the examples I just did and enter them one by one, but it'd be a lot easier if you took all those entries and put them into an Excel spreadsheet, such as this one here, where each header identifies a single piece of information that you're going to import into Maximizer, and then simply come over and click on the Import button and import the file into Maximizer. I'll show you how to do that in our 103 class, but you may want to click on this little video icon up here and watch a video on how to do the imports if you want to get a taste of that in advance, or if you're in a hurry to learn how to do this because your manager actually did walk past your desk and give you a whole bunch of entries to input. Now, of course, it's all well and good putting entries into the database, but once they're there, you want to be able to find them later. There's a nice way where you can use the View menu to see all of the database entries you've got or a selection of them. I'll show you how to search for a specific entry, and I'm going to introduce you to the Quick Search utility, which is an amazing tool for finding particular kinds of entries. And then finally, I'll show you just a nice little trick to retrieve entries that are associated with whoever you happen to be looking at in the main address book window. The simple way to find your entries is simply to come to View, take a look for all entries, or all companies and individuals, the parent entries, or all contacts that are the child entries. When you click on any of these, Maximizer will immediately do exactly what you've asked it to do and will bring back those entries. But typically, we're looking for a smaller selection of entries, maybe even only one or two. We can use the search menu here, and if we search by last name, we have the chance to find all the individuals or a selection of them in our database. Similarly, we can find all the contacts or a selection. If I uncheck contacts, I can now isolate the individuals, and if I leave this field here blank, I don't put any last name in, Maximizer will assume that I want to see all of the individuals in my database. Now remember, when I went up here to View, my choice was one that was all companies and individuals. But if what I'm really after is being able to come here and see just simply the individuals, that's how I do it. Understanding this is easy too. Replace the list with the search results, take all the entries I'm looking at here, put them back in the filing cabinet, give me whatever comes back from the search that I'm asking Maximizer to do. Narrow the list. If I had a bunch of entries here that I liked and was interested in and wanted to narrow that list down to meet the criteria that I'm putting here, that's the button I would pick. And then finally for this one, I might want to keep these entries that I've got here and add to those entries whatever the search would bring back for me. Normally, we'll just be replacing list with the search results, and over here, I'm looking at all entries, not just the starred entries. Executing the search brings back 121 entries, all of which are individuals and are now displayed in my main address book window. I can undo the search to get back to the list of entries that I was originally working with. Obviously, I could use that same search if I happen to know a person's last name and put it in there and said, Maximizer, find me the person who has that particular last name, Smith, Jones, Matheson, whatever it happens to be. They could be an individual or contact. Find them for me and bring them up for me. You will also note that I can search by a lot of other different criteria, kind of depending on what I need to find. Probably the fastest way to find an entry is to use the Quick Search utility up here. You'll notice that I can start my selection by picking all address book entries or just restricting to companies, individuals, contacts, leads, opportunities, customer service cases. For simplicity's sake, I'll leave it on address book entries. You'll notice as soon as I start to enter in a name, Maximizer immediately starts to look for suggestions it can give to me. If at this point I click Enter, Maximizer returns all of the suggestions it made for me. I'll undo that search and try again, and this time from the suggestions I'll look for the one that I'm looking for and click on it directly, and that's the only entry that Maximizer brings back for me. I'll undo the search, start over, and show you something really neat. This time when I put in the name Sally, I'm going to put a plus in front of it, and I'm going to select Sally Helpful, and Maximizer adds that entry to the list that I was already working with. You may have noticed that when I come up here to start searching, Maximizer tries to give me some little hints. Do I want to search by address or company or name? If I select name, for example, I get the name with a colon after it. I will also change the type of entry I'm searching for from address book entries to contacts. I'll type in Sally, because all the words after the parameter need to be matched. Sally is sufficient. If I use the magnifying glass over here, Maximizer will return the 4 Sallys that we saw earlier. There's quite a bit more that can be done with this Quick Search utility, and you will want to watch the video that we have on that on our YouTube channel. Sometimes when I have contacts here, I may want to actually bring back the parent entry to which that contact belongs. For example, let's take Summers Manufacturing and Daphne's Treats. I'm going to go up to Edit and make the selected list current so that I'm only looking at those two, and then I'm going to go over to Search and retrieve companies and individuals, and that brings back the parent entries for those two entries. I'm going to select all and deselect all. I'm going to click on Summers Manufacturing because I know there are a lot more contacts in Summers Manufacturing than just Sally Henderson. So this time I'll go to Search and retrieve contacts, and I can see all of the contacts that are related to Summers Manufacturing. Now your manager comes back to you and says, I'm really happy that you've made all those entries in the database. You know how to find them. Now I need you to contact them and see what you can do to convert them from being prospects to actually being our customers. So how do I do that? Obviously, there are three ways. I can do it by phone, by email, and by snail mail. And let's take a quick look at each of these. Let's start with Sally Helpful at Daphne's Treats. The easiest way to phone her is to click here on the phone icon, which of course brings up the dialog box, lift the receiver and dial. But what's important is what happens afterwards. Answered, message, no answer, busy. I can get the same kind of result if I go to Actions and make a call, and I get a similar result if I go to Actions and receive a call. The difference here is that I immediately go to making a note when I've received a call, whereas if I go to Actions and make a call, I have to do something first, such as have that call answered, and then again, I can make a report on what was discussed and done in that call. The reason for either clicking on the phone icon or using the Actions dropdown is so that afterwards, Maximizer will keep a copy of the notes you made on that call, and later you can actually come over to here and generate a report on incoming and outgoing calls. So if your manager asked you, how many calls did you make on such and such a day, you would be able to generate this kind of a report. And if you wanted to or needed to, you could click on the details, for example, of the calls that I made. I could see the kind of calls I made, whether they were outcoming or incoming, when they were made, what the duration was. And on any given call, I could click again on details and come up with the notes that I actually made during that call. Imagine how easy it is using this process to answer your manager's question about who have you called, when did you call them, and what was the result of those calls. Contacting people by email is also very simple. To do this, let's go back to Sally Forth. All I need to do is click on Sally's email address here under Details and Basic Information, and this brings up the dialog box where I can go ahead and compose the email the same I would if I was emailing from Outlook or any other email client. I can put in a subject, the body of the email. I've already developed a signature for myself here. I'll show you later how to do that. And I'm going to click down here to send a copy of this message to myself, carbon copy. I could do that if I wanted to, but for my purposes, it's sufficient to include the message body in a note and a copy in the entries documents. And you'll see that when I do that, that ends up being treated as if it was a normal email that I've saved from anywhere else. So let me just do this kind of random, and random here as well. I've got it identified as a service announcement, which will mean something to you in a couple of minutes. I'll go ahead and click send, and that email has been sent from Maximizer to Sally. And what's also interesting is I can go over to my documents window, and there's a copy of the email exactly as I asked it to be saved. When I click on this email, I have the option to reply, reply all, forward, or print, the same as I would with any other email as well. Now let's go back to the entries that we were looking at before. Let's select all of them and decide to send an email to every single one. I click Actions, write an email, and this time instead of going to the current entry, I say to all selected entries, and I click OK. Maximizer tells me that one or more of the entries don't have email addresses. They have been skipped. I say OK. And now I note that all the rest of them have been merged to this email. So this email will be merged to that list. Once again, I fill out the email the way I want it to go to each of them. But after filling it out, I realize I can also personalize it. Instead of just saying hi, I'll put my cursor there, click on this merge button, and I will select here first name. It's selected. I click OK. And now my email says, hi, first name. We would like to invite you to, etc., etc. Please let us know if you can make it. Yours truly, myself, and so on and so forth. When I click send, Maximizer will merge this email to the list, and every entry that has a first name will have the first name replacing the merge field placeholder. The easiest way to check is to come to the Documents window, Shirley Delgado, and Sally Henderson. Any of the ones that actually received the email, I can click on it, and you'll see it was personalized. Hi, Sally. We want to invite you, etc. Please let us know if you can make it, and so on, exactly as you would expect. So, yes, we can send group emails, but best practices dictates that we check to see who has an email address before we actually ever click send. There are some other elements of this also that are important to be aware of, and we have a good video on the best practices for email sending. You'll want to take a look at that. What you also may not be aware of is that Maximizer has an email campaign utility built into the module side of the product. There's a video that covers that too. But an email campaign is where you want to send a selection of emails to a selection of people, and you want to simply say, Maximizer, send these, for example, 6 emails out. I've given you the spacing a week apart. I've given you the recipients. Go ahead and do your thing. Let me know when you're done, and Maximizer will go ahead and do it for you. As you are no doubt aware, there is legislation in place designed to restrict the flow of spam emails. In Canada, the program is called CASL, C-A-S-L. It's an opt-in program. In the USA, it's called CAN-SPAM. It's an opt-out. And in Europe, it's called GDPR, and it's also opt-in. Opt-in means that you have to have permission to send before you send. Opt-out means that you can send until somebody tells you to stop. Again, this is addressed in one of our videos because I don't have time to go through all the details now. In brief, your system administrator has to go over into the administrator module, click on System Fields, click on the plus button next to Address Book, and click here on the button next to Email Types, and then add the types of emails you anticipate sending. In Canada, a service announcement does not require permission to be sent, but anything that could be construed as a solicitation does require that consent. So when setting this up, for example, with marketing email, you'll notice that over here, permission from emails recipients is required. That's a toggle, either it is or is not required. And in the case of marketing emails, it definitely is required. That was why I mentioned when I was doing these sample emails that these went out as service announcements rather than as marketing email, and I said it would make more sense to you once we got a little bit further down the line. Whichever jurisdiction you are working in, this utility in Maximizer will help you avoid problems, but you will want to get expert qualified advice on your specific compliance requirements. The penalties are just too great to play around with this and treat it casually. If you wanted to send things to these folks by snail mail, you would use the Word integration. You would click on Open Microsoft Word, and then click on the Maximizer tab and go ahead and create labels or envelopes. Pretty simple to follow through on this, and as you might have imagined, we have a video that talks about doing that in some detail. Now let's take a look at what we do to keep track of our activities with our customers. We can add a note or a document, book a task or an appointment, use notifications, and use the Outlook integration. Here we go. When we looked at the Custom tab, you saw how easy it was for me to create a note and to create a document. I'll just show you that quickly again, but this time in the actual following windows. I'm in the Documents window. You've seen it capture emails, and over here, if I click on New Document, I have that same dialog box come up where I can browse to any place on my computer or network and drag and drop files, contracts, proposals, anything like that, and add them to the Documents window that again is attached to this entry and gives me information about that entry. On the Notes side, same thing. I can click Add. I get the same Notes dialog box, which is date and timestamp. The creator is noted. Full access, in this case, is to me, but I could make full access public as well as read access public. In an office where people are able to pull up notes that other people have made about a customer, add or take away things from those notes as clarification is received, making those things accessible public is probably a good idea. Most people keep the notes to themselves in terms of who can make a change to the note, but they allow read access to be public so that anybody else in the office can see what's going on with that particular company. And of course, we have categories to identify the kind of note that this is. Now let's suppose you've talked to one of your regular customers, let's say it's Sally Helpful, but the outcome of the conversation is that your manager has to prepare a presentation for her board of directors. Here's how you can make sure that he or she knows what they have to do. You come down to Sally's Activities window and click here to add a task. The presentation has to be done on May the 30th, so by May the 27th, your manager has to have all the document samples and presentation materials collected together in one place so that he or she can prepare for the presentation and practice it before actually having to give it. You click down here to assign this task to your manager and click OK. When you click OK again, Maximizer advises you that this task will not be visible for you over here in the hot list window. It will appear in Christina Donato's hot list window. Do you wish to continue? And you click OK. And you can send an email to Christina just letting her know that this is the date by which she has to have these things done, and you can send that to her. And in effect, what you're doing is creating a hot list task that she can see in her Maximizer, plus you're sending an email reminder that this is going to have to be done by that point in time. And of course, you can keep track of it because it shows up in Sally Helpful's activity window to which you have access. You don't have to worry about it not showing up in your hot list window because it shows up here perfectly well. And you can kind of keep it in mind that you want to check on that and make sure there's a check mark on that on or before May the 27th. As part of that effort, your manager also wanted you to, of course, book the appointment in Maximizer so that he or she could keep track of that. And as we said, that was planned for May the 30th at 10 a.m. rather than p.m. until 11 a.m. The location is Sally's office and boardroom. And you'll notice if I click Save Now, I'm reminded that I have to put a subject up here. And the subject, of course, is Presentation to Board of Directors. If you wanted to, you could click here to include Sally Helpful in the email reminders regarding this particular appointment. I can set a reminder time and an alarm time in advance of this event. I certainly want to make sure that I have others invited, most notably my manager. So I start typing in here Christina's name, and now she's added to this appointment as well. Christina said she wanted to bring along another staff member, so I identify that person and make sure they're added to the appointment also. On second thought here, I unchecked this one because I remembered that Sally doesn't have a current email address yet at the office where she works. She just hasn't worked there long enough to have that in place yet. I'll call her, or if this is you taking care of your manager, you'll make sure that you call her. But when you click Save on this appointment, the email dialog box comes up with all the attendees for that appointment getting an email reminder of the appointment. And we click Send to send it off. Not only can I keep track of that appointment here in the Activities window for Sally, but I can actually go over to the Calendar module itself, click over to next week, and see the appointment right where I expect to see it. To take a look at notifications, we have to go over to Administration and to the Notification Manager. You will definitely want to watch this video because there are some setups that have to be done in the background, as it were, in order for the Notifications Manager to work. Once you've gone through that, you'll see an active check mark over here for the address book, opportunities, and customer service. That means that you can generate notifications. For example, in the address book, if we've added a new entry from such and such a place that's interested in this particular part of our product line, that can generate a notification. If you're a manager or if you're in sales, these things can be very invaluable to you so that you have a sense of where the business is going. The final thing I want to go over in this section has to do with the Outlook integration. You've already seen that you can generate emails from within Maximizer and have them saved to the Documents window in Maximizer. But what happens when you receive an email by way of Outlook? The fact is that once you have the integration done between Maximizer and Outlook, you will have a Maximizer ribbon in your Outlook that allows you to identify an email and click up here, Save to an Address Book Entry. In this case, the particular entry, myself, Byard Wood, already exists in the database, and therefore when I tell Outlook to save this to Maximizer, the integration says, is this the person you want to save it to? And I click OK, and that email has now been pushed over into my record in the database. Let me show you. I'll put Outlook down, I'll put the email address for Byard Wood up here, and search. There's the entry. I come over to the Documents window, and there's the email that came to me through Outlook. The last thing we'll take a look at today is how you can take better control of the space that you're working with, the way you're looking at Maximizer, what you see, and how things are presented to you. We'll go up here and click on Preferences, and then we'll click on Other Preferences. But before I do, you'll notice up here that your Maximizer may indicate 500 entries as the maximum number that are returned on a search. Unless you have a very large database, we recommend that you switch that over to All. Then I come over to Other Preferences, and in the Calendar and Hot List window here, I like to make sure that I've got this check mark to carry forward unfinished tasks and unfinished appointments. I like to make sure that email appointments and task notifications will always be sent. And I like to recommend that for Calendar and Hot List, you have full access to all users in your company in both cases. That simply means if you're out of the office and somebody takes a call for you and they need to create a hot list task, they can do it. They need to create an appointment for you, they can do that as well. Then over here under Startup, I like to recommend that you view the last list from your Maximizer session when you open the address book. When starting your Maximizer, most people will go either to the address book or to the hot list, but as you can see, every module over here that is also available over here on the left can be selected as the one that's made first available to you when you open Maximizer. Then finally under Email, make sure that you put a check mark here for Save Copy of an Email Message to your Documents window, optional as to whether you also save it as an email note, but this is important. When sending email to multiple entries, set the default as separately so that therefore nobody sees anybody else's email address. This is where you create your auto signature, and we have a simple little video that'll help you with that. When you're done, you click OK. When you're done here, you click OK. And when you're finally done here as well, you click Save. The next thing you will want to do is probably reduce a little bit of the visual overhead that you have in your tab following windows. So open them up, uncheck the ones that you don't want to have to see, contacts, user-defined fields. There's a number of these that you simply won't need to work with. If you're working with your custom tab particularly, you'll end up seeing just about everything that you need to. Click OK when you've made your selections. And now you only have the tab following windows that you know you want to work with. Similarly, to reduce the module list over here, go back up here to your Preferences and click on Customize the Icon Bar. After you've unchecked the modules that you don't think you'll need to work with, again click OK and again click Save, and the number of modules you'll be looking at has been reduced. The final thing you can do to modify the way you're looking at your data is to change your column setups. To do that, you go to View, Column Setups. By default, Maximizer shows you the column setup that you're currently using. You click on Properties, and this gives you the opportunity to modify that column setup, to either rename it, to change the columns that you're looking at, to add additional columns, or even to remove columns that are there already. This video down here will give this to you in more detail and will also show you how you can not only change an existing column setup, but how you can also create a brand new one or take an existing one and save it as something else. And then of course use now when you've made all of your necessary changes. Remember at the beginning, I promised I would show you what support resources we have available to help you in your Maximizer journey. You've already seen that in many places in the program, we have these little help videos that are specific to a particular area that you're looking at. But you can also come up here to our Help Center, click on General Help, and then click on Video Tutorials. Now you can click to continue to our YouTube channel, where you can see all of our video tutorials. presented in the same sequence as they occur during our Maximizer CRM 101, 102, and 103 classes. Plus up here you can search by title or subject matter. For the next resource, simply go to our website, www.maximizer.com, and then enter /contact-support to come to this page where you can give us your name, email, and phone number if you care to, tell us where you're located, submit this with your message, and we'll get back to you right away. You'll notice that we've got our phone numbers here for calling in North America, Europe, Middle East, Africa, Australia, New Zealand, and this little puppy down here on the lower right, if you click on it, you can enter into a chat with one of our specialists in customer service. We are committed to and passionate about your success with Maximizer. Bye for now.